from each happily ever after, every wish upon a star. Let's break down the movies that shaped who we are, from memory lane to now and everything in between. The most famous of films to the ones we've never seen. Decade by decade, all the times we laughed and cried, and with a little pixie dust, they will all take flight, reliving the feelings, and we're trying our very best. And if they mean the same to you, please be our guest. So hop aboard, we would love to have you as we hang with a certain mouth, the whole gang too. If you love nostalgia stuff, we hope this does the trick. Thanks for joining us as we deep dive the magic.
Hi, and welcome back to the Deep Diving the Magic podcast. I'm KJ.
And I'm Jeffrey. And we are back again today with the 52nd Disney feature-length film, a film that came out March 16th, 1961. And that film is called The Absent-Minded Professor. The Absent-Minded Professor was based on a 1943 short story called A Situation in Gravity by Samuel W. Taylor. We're back to a live action film again, and there is more familiar faces from our previous films in this one. Not quite as many as this was Family Robinson, but there's some familiar faces in this one.
Sure.
But before we dive too deep, would you like to start us off with a synopsis and some opening thoughts and facts?
Yep. A college professor invents an anti-gravity substance which a corrupt businessman wants for himself.
Makes sense.
This is streaming on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
It runs an hour and 37 minutes. It is listed as science fiction and comedy.
Is this our first science fiction? Well, no, I'm sure 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was.
Yeah, it probably was. It was probably also action and adventure. This might have not been so much action and adventure. But this is another black and white film.
Mm-hmm. It was colorized for its 1986 VHS release.
Yeah. And like you said, it does have a few people that we've seen in some previous films.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, it was pretty good.
Yeah. You want to dive in, or you got any more facts before we?
What kind of facts do you want to go in?
Well, the sky's the limit, my friend.
All right. I don't want to take away from anything that you're already talking about.
All right, so let's just go ahead and jump in. So, we start off with actually before the credits on this one.
Mm-hmm.
We meet the main character who is teaching a chemistry class in what appears to be a college.
Mm-hmm.
He plays the trumpet to attempt to break the beaker, but instead breaks the students' glasses. How would that make you feel if you were like in class and somebody broke your glasses first period?
Well, I mean, I would have had a headache for the rest of the day because I have astigmatism, so
yeah,
it would have not been pleasant.
But then after that,
he would have owed me a new pair of glasses.
It's true, because I wouldn't have been able to see.
Well, depending on which eye it was.
Yeah.
Because it only did one of his glasses, which doesn't make sense. Why would it only get one lens? It only did one lens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the credits do roll, and it's the school band is playing.
Mm-hmm.
We then see after the credits that the classroom blows up.
Mm-hmm.
And the professor is, after his classroom blows up, he opens his book to try to give the class an assignment, like some homework. But he sees like a sticky note in there that says that he's supposed to get married that night. And he almost forgot. Thoughts on that? On almost forgetting your wedding?
Was it 8 or 8:30?
I think 8.
Because I thought that was kind of late for a wedding.
On a school night. Because they had to go to work in the morning.
Yeah, it was a very interesting wedding.
So, but he almost forgot.
Yeah, but then we find out that it's not the first attempt.
No.
He has had to get married. This is the third attempt.
That's right.
For this wedding to happen. So
then we see the bride-to-be, who is getting dropped off by a fellow teacher named Shelby, who this is where we learn that this is actually the third attempt at marriage.
Yeah.
And the Reverend mistakes the wrong guy as the groom, which means that the Reverend hasn't even met the groom yet, which means that, again, this is the third attempt for the groom to show up. There's
But the other teacher also,
it's from a different school.
yeah, he's from a different school. So I thought
Yeah.
that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
They're all hanging out, but
Maybe they're college buddies.
I guess.
There's lots of flowers and guests. They say that they all say, "Oh, third time's a charm." But then we cut to Professor Brainard, who is working in a chemistry lab at his own house this time, clearly not remembering that his wedding is coming up.
But when you keep watching it, there's notes. He's left himself, or
Yeah.
she has left him, I don't know, notes everywhere that keep saying, get married.
Yeah.
8:00.
So he has a housekeeper, this lovely housekeeper lady whose name I don't know. She tries to get him to hurry up for the wedding, but he keeps saying that he is working on solving secrets of the universe and he has plenty of time.
Yeah, I looked her up when we were watching it because when I first saw her, I thought she was the woman that played Granny Clampett from the Beverly Hillbillies, but she wasn't. I was very let down. Just now you can kind of tell what she kind of looks like.
I mean, when did I'm not gonna look it up, but
yeah, it's not the same one. I thought it was, but it wasn't.
So she's telling him to hurry, but he's like, "Oh, I'm trying to solve the secrets of the universe. I have plenty of time." So he dives right back into his science project, completely disregarding his wedding. He pulls the lever, things start to do sciencey things, and he's all excited. But then his home lab, kind of like his school laboratory, his home laboratory blows up,
'Cause
and
he's doing sciencey things.
and at the exact same time, his home phone is ringing, and it's a very upset bride to be with a house full of upset guests. 3 strikes and you're out.
But nobody answers.
Yep, 3 strikes and you're out. We see that the explosion had knocked out the professor, who has no idea what happened scientifically. He admits that it's the end, and the end of that, and he kicks the contraption, which starts to bubble and make a bunch of noises and then float in the air. And Brainard is in shock. He did it. He opens the contraption to reveal a goo-like substance that he balls up and throws it, and it bounces all over the place with no gravity generating its own energy.
It just keeps going higher and higher.
He talks to his dog. He says, "It's a breakthrough, Charlie." And it is flying rubber. Flubber. What do you say about the dog?
So this poor dog.
Yeah. Well, in the last film this dude was in, he hated dogs. So
yeah, now he loves dogs. He brought his love over from the end of the movie on the last film to this one.
For the Shaggy Dog. So he invented flying rubber, or flubber for short. Thoughts on that?
Foreshadowing.
Flubber.
Because that's gonna completely make sense. If somebody walked up to you on the street and you had no idea what they were talking about, and they're like, "I invented flubber."
Yeah.
This is important. Flubber. What are you gonna think?
His housekeeper, she arrives the next morning to hear the sounds of science in the lab in the backyard, realizing that he'd never made it to the wedding. And what I want to know is, why wasn't this poor lady invited to the wedding?
I thought she was supposed to take him.
Yeah, well, she clearly wasn't invited. She went home.
Yes, because when she was leaving, well, the wife to be said his housemaid knows to make sure he gets here in time. So I assumed she was bringing him.
Yeah.
So I was confused by that because she didn't. And when she left him that night, she said, "Well, happy honeymoon." And I thought she was just leaving him in the garage saying, "Okay, well, you're married to your work." I thought that's what she meant. And then she just drives off. And then, like, not 2 seconds later, after she drives off, is when the explosion happens.
So next morning when she gets there, Brainard is still working. He's clueless that he's missed his wedding. And then he realizes that he did it again.
She was like, "You missed the wedding." And he's like, "No, I didn't. It's da-da-da.
7 o'clock.
And she's like, "In the morning." Yeah. And he's like, "Oh my gosh."
So it cuts.
I wonder what happened the first 2 times.
Probably the same thing.
Well, he didn't have, obviously, his home science garage blow up. So, I mean, what do you think happened the first 2 times that were so important that he missed it?
Science. So the wife to be, who was left at the altar, is going into work the next morning, and she works at the school, and she's upset, and she's talking to, I don't know, the dean or the principal or something, and he says that a gentleman named Mr. Hawk is going to take over the campus and turn it into apartments because he's an alumni who's donated a lot of money to the school. So he like they owe him, and he's going to take over the school. So the school's going to close. And then at the same time, Brainard shows up with flowers to give to his very obviously upset not so wife. He tries to tell her about Flubber, but he gets thrown out of the building, and she's not having anything
He's
to
like,
do with
I've
it.
got an explanation. Flubber.
Yep, and she throws him out.
She's just looking at him like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And at the same time that he's leaving, Mr. Hawk shows up with his son, who we learned flunked Brainard's science class.
Yeah. So unlike the Swiss Family Robinson, when Tommy Boy, I'm pretty sure it's his real name, Tommy, was super, super smart, he is not in this movie. So something happened and he lost all his brains in this one.
Yeah. He failed Brainard's class, which we find out that means that he can't play in the big basketball game that night. Mm-hmm. And the father, who again is trying to get rid of the school, is very upset. Yep. Betsy is the bride who left at the altar. She gives Brainard a chance to explain, but he only blabs and blabs about science, which means she's just upset with him. Brainard says that he thinks that Flubber could save the college and make millions. Betsy is not pleased. She is not. She's over.
But she never really stops to listen to what he's actually talking about.
So then on their drive, Mr. Hawk and his son, Mr. Hawk is talking about how he's going to take over the school and close the school, but then the star player's son talks about how he can't do it, but the dad wants nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. He's no success. He's closing the school down. But then we see that Mr. Hawk, who's a wealthy man, put a large bet down against the school that night
because
in the basketball game.
Not many people knew his son was benched, and supposedly he was the star of the team. So if he was benched, then the game is pretty much set to win for the other team.
Yep. So he puts a sleazeball bet against his son's team,
and his son is not happy about it because he goes, "I can't believe you're going to bet against us."
No, he bets against them for sure. So then we cut to
he ranks right up there with Cruella.
Yeah. So then we go into Professor Brainard's garage, and he's going to make a Flubber car. He's going to turn his old Model T into a car that doesn't have a gravity issue and can fly.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know if he initially realized it was going to fly, or if he just thought that it was going to run itself, because he was saying that Flubber was like self-energy sustaining. Yeah. So I had wondered if he knew the car was going to fly, because when it first started happening, it was almost like he was oblivious to that the car is flying.
Yeah. So he buckles in the dog, and believe it or not, the Flubber car starts to fly because science. And I guess all you need is faith, trust, and a little bit of pixie Flubber to be able to fly. Little Peter Pan throwback there. So he decides that he's going to fly over and he's going to drop in on Betsy to show her, like, look, I did this.
Yeah.
He's singing a song about her. But he arrives at Betsy's house.
She's not going to be angry anymore once I explain.
Mm-hmm. He arrives at Betsy's house to see the other teacher, Shelby, taking Betsy out. So you snooze, you lose. Mm-hmm. She leaves before he can show her the car. And then we cut to the basketball game, and they're all in the crowd for this basketball game. Mr. Hawk, his son, Professor Brainard, Betsy, Shelby, they're all in the crowd. The crowd is going wild, but the school is doing absolutely horribly. It's very much like a Harlem Globetrotters game. It's very much just like one-sided, a lot to a little, the other team. Mm-hmm. But then Mr. Shelby, who teaches at the other school, is like clearly enjoying that his team's doing so good. So he's just spitballing a bunch of trash. And he says that that the team should try elevator heels. So then Brainard gets an idea and conveniently has enough time and enough shoes to iron flubber into the soles of all their shoes. So he says, this is something that was fun. He says that Betsy was going to be flubbergasted. That's hilarious. So he sneaks into the locker room during a rousing halftime speech from a coach that has 100% checked out, and he switches all of their shoes. So he just happened to know all of their shoes.
All their shoe
Yeah,
sizes.
he got a bunch of Converses and he ironed flubber into it.
Yeah.
But it works because then we see a very, very bouncy basketball team starting them out their comeback, and they are flying all over the place. They are bouncing.
Like Air Jordan had nothing on this.
That's right. Shelby and
like he only wished. Could you imagine if Michael Jordan had that on his shoes back in the day?
What do they call him? Your Royal Airness or whatever. I do love Space Jam, but that's not Disney.
I don't even know like how much better would he have been.
I mean, he is the best.
A little flubber. We should ask him if you want to be on our podcast.
Yeah, please. So Shelby's upset. Mr. Gamble against my son, Mr. Hawk, is upset.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that the refs can do because in the rule book, there's nothing that says that one team can't jump higher than the other team.
Yeah. And then even though you're benched, you're excited and you're pulling for your team now because they're making a comeback for themselves. So that's nice.
They very comically come back for the win, and the crowd goes crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But then Mr. Brainard is like trying to explain it to Betsy. She gets upset that he's trying to take all the credit.
Mm-hmm.
But Brainard decides that he's going to follow Shelby, and then Shelby drops off Betsy, and he decides that he's going to bounce his flying car on top of Shelby's car.
Mm-hmm.
He calls it like the Shelby hop or something later on. I don't know what it was. The Shelby bounce. That's what he calls it later. And he says desperate men do desperate things, which is funny because all he had to do was show up to his dang wedding, and he wouldn't have to do any of this. But Shelby is clearly thinking he's losing his mind because there's a car jumping on him, so he starts to drive faster, which causes him to crash.
But did he know it was a car
on
top of him? I thought he just was like, no, there was something on top of my car making this noise.
So he decides to drive faster, which causes him to crash headfirst into a police car, and it's the same two cops from the Shaggy Dog that kept thinking that they were seeing a dog talk, which is a good throwback. They think that Shelby's drunk. They make him blow into a breathalyzer.
That was like a balloon. It was the weirdest, I guess, maybe the first breathalyzer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We realize, or we learn here that the gambling dad lost $15,000 on the basketball game, which is wild.
Serves him right.
Yep.
Betting against his own team.
But then the son finds out from the teammates that Mr. Brainard was in the locker room at halftime. So he's telling his dad about Mr. Brainard being in the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
And at the exact same time, the dad looks out the window and sees the flying Model T soar past, blowing his spot.
He goes, well, what was he doing in there? And he was giving them a very good morale boosting speech.
Yep. And then we see the car fly by. Excuse me. So Mr. Hawk is very interested in what that car would be worth. He goes to see Brainard the next day at his house, talking to him about, basically a brand new Medford College with more science buildings, and talks about, Brainard's revolutionary discovery. He tries to get Brainard to turn his car over at him with some blackmail, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So Brainard says that he's going to call the president, and they're going to throw out the Hawks. Like he's going right to the top with this.
Because he wants his invention to do a lot more for society than just make money.
Correct. And then at the same time, Son Hawk tells Gamble Dad Hawk that they're going to switch the cars, with a different Model T that they have access to. We then see the White House, and Mr. Brainard is on the phone with somebody at the White House, and he is discussing all about Flubber. Talks to the Department of Defense. They brush him off. They tell him to write a letter. He's talking to somebody. Everybody's just not having it.
Yeah, everybody just keeps, you need, and then they like forward him to
Which is-
the next rank.
which is weird because eventually, but yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, we learn that there's a dance that night, and Mr. Brainard is not going to go, but his housekeeper was like, "You have to go. The universe is millions and millions and millions of years old, so it can wait, but the girl cannot wait." So she talks him into going to the dance because even a chimpanzee will fight for its mate. So then he gets an idea. He's going to put some flubber on his own shoes to make him a better dancer. He arrives at the dance, and then we see that the Hawks work on their plan to switch the cars out front, obviously. And then Mr. Brainard has a hard time controlling his bouncing shoes, but he does see Betsy dancing with Shelby.
Which makes me wonder, why did he have so much trouble just learning how to walk on that, and the guys in the basketball game didn't?
Well, I mean, they were just bouncing all over the place.
I know, but like when they walked out there,
Mm.
they were fine. They were able to walk on it on those shoes before.
Yeah, I don't know. He forces his way into
Fishy.
what?
It's fishy.
Fishy, bouncy. He forces his way into getting Betsy's attention with his bouncy dancing.
Mhm.
And then the crowd and the band end up getting behind all of his skills. He bounces up and he swings on a balloon, and the crowd's singing about the flying trapeze. But then, clearly somebody listened, because in the next scene at the dance, we see the gentlemen from Washington have arrived to the dance
Mhm.
to see Brainard swinging from the ceiling. He all excited.
They probably think he's some kind of drunk.
Yep, he's very excited. He takes him out to the car, which he assumes is his car, and he puts the military officers into the car. And at the least opportune time, the car does not fly. He tries to talk his way out of it, but then he opens up the hood and some birds fly out. There's some squirrels running on running wheels.
Mhm.
So clearly someone's playing a joke on him, and all the military people are just like, yeah, this is clearly stupid.
This guy's crazy.
And Mr. Hawk is,
And his son are just laughing.
he's winning. You lost my $15,000. Now I'm gonna get this in your face. Betsy is stressed with Brainard, but at the same time, she says that she's done with Shelby. Shelby's a jerk. She's done with Shelby. So on her way out, she stops by Brainard to make sure that he's okay. And this is when he realizes that he still has some flubber in his pocket, and he can show her the bounds. At the exact same time, he does realize then that this car doesn't have a radio in it, so it must have switched his car. Like someone must have switched his car. And at the exact same time, Betsy admits that she does believe him, and they embrace. They then realize that Mr. Hawk must have done this, so they start to talk to Mr. Hawk about flubber shoes, because shoes are 10 times more valuable than a flying car. Because in the 1960s, only so many people have, I forgot what it was, only X amount % of people have cars.
But
everybody has shoes. They put some flubber on his shoes, causing him to have a little pep in his step. They even show him the power of jumping, causing Mr. Hawk to jump out the window and causing him to bounce higher than the house, but he can't figure out how to stop. He can't, so they got him trapped. They trick him into telling them to admit where the car is, and they go to his warehouse where the car is. They sneak in. They're looking for the car. Brainard bounces his way over, being detected with his rubbery shoes. The fire department comes. The whole town is obsessed with Mr. Hawk bouncing in.
Police,
the basketball team.
The lady was like, I called the police because I was about to take a bath and I saw this guy in my window, but I didn't know he needed help.
So Mr. Hawk
I was just like, oh boy, what a creep.
He can't stop bouncing. And they say that he's gaining 18 inches of bounce. So at 7 p.m. tonight, he's going to be in some serious trouble.
Yeah.
We see the fire chief, who is the voice of the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland and Uncle Albert from Mary Poppins. At the same time, they're at Brainard and Betsy are at the warehouse, and they're trying to flubber their way into it. The school football team ends up tackling Mr. Hawk to stop him from bouncing, and then they all leave to the warehouse to try to stop Mr. Brainard. They're able to escape the warehouse, and they fly the flubber car out and away from the pursuing Hawk and his henchmen. But then we like they're flying, and she believes them, so they're about to have this like sentimental moment, but Hawk ends up shooting guns at them. Thoughts about that? If you're like about to kiss your husband who left you at the altar, and then someone shoots a gun at you while you're in a flying car.
First of all, he stood you up 3 times.
3 times.
Now he's getting you shot at. Is this the person you want to marry?
Well,
what a wild adventure this couple's going to be on.
That's true. So they decide that they're going to go back to the car and they're going to bounce on it. They're going to do the old Shelby bounce from earlier on this car, causing this car to collide with the same police car from earlier. These cops need a raise, and then Brainard and Betsy are like, "We're flying to Washington D.C."
Didn't you think? Well, I don't know if you thought, but I think you realized that both police officers were the same ones from the Shaggy Dog.
Yeah, they need a raise for sure. So Betsy and Brainard
probably think they're going crazy the whole time.
They decided that they're going to fly away to Washington D.C. But they get detected because they're flying in a prohibited zone, causing all sorts of alarms to go off. Kind of like when we got an oil delivery during brand practice when all those alarms were going off. So, inside joke right there. And the military is launching.
Call your wife when that happens.
Listen, I don't want to hear it. The military launches a bunch of aircraft to stop it. They're again about to get romantic and kiss when they are interrupted by military aircraft. But the pilots are in shock when they see it's a flying car.
Pirates right out of Swiss Family
Robinson. Right. Dude, there were so many pirates in Swiss Family Robinson. Like they just kept coming. But they
have found their way in this film.
The military pilots are in shock because it's a flying car. They're able to fly away. They fly like around each Washington D.C. monument.
But the pilots lost them because they flew into a cloud.
Yep.
And the people on the ground that wanted the visual are like, well, what did you see? And they're like, it's a flying car. And he's like, I need you to go around and look again. Yeah. Like, what did you really see? And he's like, I'm pretty sure I saw a car and I can't see them now because they're in the clouds and they won't come out.
So they decided that they're going to shoot missiles at it because, it's an attack.
So they start talking on the radio to let these people obviously have a warning, I guess.
Yeah, how to identify
as of so far, they have been completely in the blue and had no idea what was going on.
But so they're trying to identify themselves, but like nobody can hear them on the ground. So they hide behind the Capitol building. But then right before somebody shoots at them,
my favorite thing is he's like, we need to look for the Pentagon. It's a building with 5 sides
in a big parking lot or whatever.
It's a building with 5 sides.
Yeah.
Called the Pentagon. And I'm sitting here thinking, that's not the building you want to be heading for.
No.
People are already trying to shoot you down, buddy.
Well,
but okay.
This came out many years before.
Go ahead.
Whatever.
Well, no, they knew what they were going for. And
but then before they shoot missiles at them, there's like a countdown. They're like 10, 9.
And they just automatically have the radio on all of a sudden?
But
it hasn't been on this whole
car
time.
Has the radio on.
Yeah, but the whole time they've not been listening to the radio, and now they are. Like, just ironically, when the countdown starts, and they're like, "You need to identify yourself," and then all of a sudden the radio is like telling them this, but did the radio just turn itself on? Like Disney magic, it just happens.
Science.
There's a lot of Disney magic in these films.
But then there's bouncing flubber, yeah. But then before they could get to before the guy counts down for the missile, right at the end, one of the men from earlier recognizes this car.
Do you think speaking of sciencey things, that when the explosion happened to create flubber, that in another dimension at the same time was when Captain Hook made the explosion go off and Tinkerbell was about to die and some of the pixie dust went up, and that's how flubber happened.
Yeah.
Because you did say
Faith, trust, and a little bit of pixie flubber.
flubber. Yeah, you think that's what happened?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. We have solved it.
It's everything is
Okay.
intertwined.
Yes.
So the men recognize him from earlier, and then Brainard decides that he's going to land, and they see that he's about to speak with the president after the meeting,
Mhm.
And then the president announces that all branches are going to share the use of the breakthrough of flubber.
Because they were all trying to get it for themselves.
Yeah.
They were all trying
So
to
for
like sneak off.
for everybody passing it off, they all end up wanting it, and then
Yeah.
like they're interviewing him.
I'm surprised they didn't run in there and be like, "No, don't do it. We know what this is."
So then they
Somehow he got that squirrel wheel to make the car.
And then he's being interviewed by the president or by the press or whatever, and he gives an answer of "I do," but at the exact same time, it actually cuts that he's saying "I do" at
his wedding.
And his wedding.
Fourth attempt.
We see that Brainard and Betsy finally get married, and everybody celebrates. And then they get in a flying car to take off, and the back of the car says "Finally married."
Yeah.
The end, and they fly away. So, thoughts and notes and stuff about this wacky, bouncy film?
I liked it a lot better than I thought I was going to like it.
Okay.
It was very humorous. It actually, one of the reasons why it stands out is because of McMurray's portrayal of the distracted but lovable Professor Brainard.
Mm-hmm.
His deadpan humor and genuine earnestness makes him an unforgettable character. I mean, you can't help but have him get on your nerves but love him at the same time. So I guess that makes sense of why it did take him 4 times to get married, and she gave him that many tries, because he is that lovable of a character, and he in general does mean to do well.
Mm-hmm.
There were special effects in this film for visual effects, especially the sequences involving the flubber. It was considered cutting edge at the time. Watching flubber-powered shoes and flying cars was a delight in the 1960s, and it remains a nostalgic treat for today. The whimsical storytelling of this film. The film encapsulates a sense of boundless imagination, which was a hallmark of Disney's approach to storytelling during this era. It's both humorous and heartwarming. Balanced slapstick comedy with an undercurrent of sincerity.
You can see it.
Yeah. There were themes of innovation and practicality. The movie playfully critiques the tension between innovation and real-world consequences. Brainard's brilliance is undeniable, but his absent-mindedness also causes chaos, obviously, like we talked about, repeatedly missing his own wedding. It is a lighthearted exploration of the challenges of pursuing scientific discovery. And it is a cultural legacy. It was so successful, it spawned a sequel, which we will be getting to a few films down the road, The Son of Flubber, and a beloved remake, Flubber, in 1997 with Robin Williams.
Which I've never seen.
I cannot believe you've never seen it. As much as you love Robin Williams, it still blows my mind that you've never seen that one.
They talk about that in Children's Imagination with Figment. That one. But God.
Oh, the 1997 one? Yeah. Because there's little...
Like the doors in the way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway, while the remake added modern humor and CGI, many fans hold the original in higher regard for its charm and simplicity. Overall, it remains a testament to the creativity of early Disney live action filmmaking. Its balance of humor, integrity, ingenuity, and heart makes it a timeless watch for audiences of all ages.
So what you rate it?
Not there yet.
Okay.
Fun bit of trivia: there were actually 3 generations of the Wynn family in this movie.
Who's the wins?
So Ed
Oh,
Wynn,
the guy from Mary Poppins.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
the fire chief. Yep.
So Ed Wynn is the fire chief. His son, Keenan Wynn, is Alonzo Hawk. And then Keenan's son, Ned Wynn, is an uncredited actor as a young boy. So there are 3 generations in a family in this one movie, which I thought was interesting. This film was Disney's first nominated film for its visual effects. It was nominated for Best Special Effects in 1962 for the Academy Awards, marking Disney's first live action film to receive such recognition. It was inspired by real inventions. The concept of flubber or flying rubber was inspired by real world innovations in synthetic materials that fascinated audiences in the 1950s and the 1960s.
Mhm.
The flying car stunt, the iconic Model T flying car scenes were created using a mix of practical effects and optical composition. The car itself was mounted on a crane for close ups and composited with a sky background for flight scenes. And then Medfield College is a fictional college where Professor Brainard works, appears in several Disney films later on, obviously The Son of Flubber, and then The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. I guess that came out in 1969. Then the basketball game Chaos, the basketball scenes featuring the Flubber enhanced players were filmed with real athletes who wore harnesses and wires to simulate the gravity defying leaps. So they actually did use real athletes to film that section, which I thought was funny because you know how like they were talking about his son was getting benched. Obviously, these people were way older than the star player was actually when this was filmed. So there was some age differences there. They looked way older to me. It was a box office hit. The film was one of Disney's biggest live action successes of the early 1960s, solidifying Disney's ability to create profitable family films outside the animated genre.
I would say it was definitely a success.
Yeah.
So, how about your rating on
The
it?
rating. So IMDb gave this a 6.7 out of 10.
Yeah.
I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Okay. And does it bounce its way into your list upon a star?
It does.
Okay.
It does. I definitely enjoyed it better than some of the other films. Unfortunately, Toby Tyler, you're gonna be gone now. And it was really weird to see a film with some of these characters in it and not have the little kid from Toby Tyler in there. But we're just gonna go in at number 10 there.
So, what is your list upon a star?
All right, so my list upon a star is 101 Dalmatians, Sleeping Beauty, Dumbo, Lady and the Tramp, The Three Caballeros, The Shaggy Dog, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Fantasia, and The Absent-Minded Professor.
Nice. So this doesn't. Well, back. I enjoyed this film. It's cute.
Mhm.
It's fun. It does not make my list. So my list is staying at 101 Dalmatians, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Pinocchio, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Sleeping Beauty, Lady and the Tramp, Swiss Family Robinson, and The Three Caballeros. But
Yeah, I feel like this made my list because of the nostalgia I had for watching the 1997 version,
There
and
you
it was
go.
nice to see the prequel that started it all
Mhm.
and inspired it. Because I had never seen this film, so I think that's why it had a little heart-touching
Little
moment
pep
for
in your
me.
step.
Yeah, a
Um,
little bounce.
That's right. So speaking of bouncing, thank you for everyone who bounced their way through this deep dive with us.
Yeah.
We're on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, deep dive in the magic pod at gmail.com. Our next episode, our holiday episode, we will be diving into the third film in a row that was remade by the Disney company at a later time. It is from June of the same year, 1961, and that is The Parent Trap, the original Parent Trap. I can't wait to talk about that. So we'll see you then.
Thanks for deep diving the magic.
Bye.
Bye.